Okay, on March the 10th, we were notified by the Kilgores that they'd been the victims of a scam over some shoddy work done by contractors. And when our building inspector went over and did a courtesy inspection, it was substandard work. They seem to have built them out of about $33,000 is what we're looking at right now. There's an ongoing investigation that will possibly result in charges on this. Ironically, the cause of this is because there was not a building permit obtained from the city. Most cities have permit process in place that will assure that things like this doesn't happen. If you get the correct permits and then the building inspector goes out and inspects it at each stage of construction, they assure that everything is done correctly. And because the permit wasn't obtained in this instance, there was no inspections.
What is that?
That's, instead of it being one board, it's cut with this nail plate over it, splicing two boards together to make one.
And what part is this?
This is a roof truss here.
Now, was all of them like that?
Every one of them.
Every roof truss was spliced and
Yes.
put together?
Yes.
Tell me why that's not a good thing.
Well, it weakens it.
Yeah.
And you got it up there like that, it's going to naturally bolt down. It gets any weight on it.
It looks like it's already...
And it's already cracked, you know. I mean, probably from that big snow. They said after the snow melted, the sheetrock was bowed down and the nails was, you know, hanging out of the sheetrock where it had actually pushed a belly in the roof.
It wasn't going to last long, was it?
No.
Could you tell me what you discovered when you tore it down? What the quality of it was?
Yeah.
What was it? How was it?
Probably about a -40.
-40.
As far as the quality, yeah. I mean, the roof wasn't even safe to walk on. I mean, he spliced the rafters. Yeah. I mean, I've got one of them down. Of course, there's a full one down here, but I cut the piece out. You know, where he pieced it together. I mean, I've never seen that done before. And the headers on the windows, I mean, they were 9 foot. Didn't even have no jacks on them. Had 2 nails in the header.
Well, you had the floor set up. If you got 40 or 50 people out here,
Why, 15 people it would have failed.
Wow.
I mean, see, this is where the old supports for the original deck, and I mean, he used the part of the original deck. Well, he cut all the support out for that.
Huh.
And the roof was wrong, the metal roof. He didn't run it under the other one, but like an inch, and tarred it. Then he run the screws down in the flat part, not in the ridge.
Even I know better than that.
Yeah, I mean, it was poor workmanship.
Well, I wanted to accomplish having a room that was functional, because up until this room was not functional, and I was hoping it would be functional for us to use during the holiday season, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
More room for grandkids and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, see, there was a room here. All we did was we wanted to enlarge it and increase it.
Uh-huh.
Lewis goes to Lowe's, and he was informed that they no longer refer, customers, building contractors to their customers, and directed him to Porch. And we were totally unfamiliar with Porch.
It's a website.
And but at this time period, and during this time period, we didn't have a computer, and so he was provided with an 800 number, and he called Porch and asked about a building contractor for this job project, and they recommended this Lee Sturgill of Lee's Construction Service. And
they're based in Kingsport?
Yes, his address, according to his card, was Memorial Boulevard. And so Lewis asked if they had anything bad on him, and they said no, that he was licensed and insured. He comes back with a man by the name of Terry Cassidy. They discussed the building materials and things like this, and Of course, at that time, we didn't, we just thought he was associated with this Lee Sturgill, this Terry Cassidy. But it wasn't until maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks later into the project that we learned that this Lee Sturgill of Lee's Construction Service had subcontracted this project out to Terry Cassidy of Precise Home Improvements. They had put the drywall up, and then flooring was down. But the subfloor was down, and I knew. I slapped my hand against the wall. And I told my husband, I said, "This is not good." I also called Porch, and I said the same thing. This is not good.
What was wrong with it?
Well,
I mean, you're not a construction professional. What did you see as a?
I just knew that it wasn't right. I just knew that it wasn't right. It didn't look right. The flooring was not level, and the flooring was warped, and that was visual as well.
Okay.
I mean, this was obvious. It was something that was visual. And instead of correcting this problem, he was ready to go ahead and start painting. And he made such a mess.
When you mean, describe what the floor would look like.
It was warped. The floor was warped. It was visually, you could see it visually, it was warped. It's what they had done with the drywall. They had put so much plaster on the wall, and where they had put the tape on the seams, it was all wrinkled. They had put it on so heavily. They had applied the drywall mixture so heavily on, and they used a sand blaster that it was just you couldn't even see. Everything from the foundation up was done incorrectly.
Yeah.
Everything. So many mistakes. And there were some, like I say, the visual we were aware of, the nail heads on the walls popping out, the seams where they, that, and we'll show pictures. These were obvious, the floor being warped, the way that they installed the molding, we have pictures. These were visual that we could see visually. I called Porch and numerous times and I complained. Again, all during this time period, they maintained that he was licensed and insured. But when Lee Sturgill, after all this mess, and never offered to correct a mistake, to do the job right, he wanted Lewis to give him another additional $10,000, to complete the job. And we had a warped floor. We had walls that, we had molding that wasn't even. I'll show you pictures.
Okay.
And he was wanting $11,000, and we had just nothing was right.
We're supposed to have had the real good stuff to build with, and not cheap stuff. And they kept maintaining that they could do it right and fix it.
But like I said, we confronted. I confronted Sturgill and asked in front of the other workers if he was insured. Well, he said, he would go home and of course, all during the he'd always say he would, all his paperwork, at home, and he'd go home and get him, bring him back. And Lewis said no. Said you've had your chances, and you've too many mistakes that you have not corrected, and you can leave. Because Porch had told me on the phone, and I had talked with Ashley with Porch, and she said that that basically that this was not their problem, that we would have to work it out with Lee and with Terry Cassidy. We'd have to work it out. Mm-hmm. So Lewis calls Terry, and he comes, and he assures us that we could expect a phone call from his insurance company within a couple of days. He did not give us the name of an insurance company at that time, because we had called the state of Tennessee and the Commonwealth of Virginia to learn that they had no record of Lee Sturgill with Lee's Lee's Improvement Services. They had no record of him on file. So Lewis calls Terry Cassidy again, and Terry says that he is insured with Farm Bureau, and hangs up on Lewis, my husband. Mm-hmm. Lewis calls the local Farm Bureau here in Mount Carmel, and he calls the corporate headquarters of Farm Bureau, and was told that he was not licensed with Farm Bureau. This Terry Cassidy
Not
for
insured.
South Home Improvements, that he was not licensed. He was not insured with Farm Bureau. So that was a falsehood.
Mm-hmm.
We are incurring the cost of building this room again.
Right.
Okay, this room was paid for in full, which we have copies of the credit union receipts.
How much did you spend altogether?
Okay, for the first project, it was I guess around over $28,000.
Uh-huh. And then how much is this going to cost?
And this right here is going to cost around $30,000.
Yeah.
This is a priority to us because we don't want contractors coming into our town from anywhere and doing substandard work. Because the city's stance on this is that if you come in here and do substandard work to a residence, it affects the family that lives there now, but it could affect the families that live there in the future, that if the house is sold or rented to someone else, and if, just like for instance electricity, if it's not done right, it could cause a fire, or if the plumbing's not done right, it could cause a flood, and it usually ends up in costing more money or possibly lives later on down the line.